Okay, good evening and welcome. I'm going to give our viewing public a little bit of a rundown about tonight's meetings of the board. We will be starting out with a special meeting followed by a work session. And after the work session, the board does have an executive session this evening. So a little bit of a unusual Wednesday, first Wednesday of the month. So I'll now call the October 6th special meeting of the Lane Community College Board of Education to order. In order to continue conducting meetings in a manner that helps to combat the spread of COVID-19 and promote the safety and well-being of our community, this meeting is being held remotely. I'd like to remind board members and staff to keep themselves muted. Use the hand raise feature when you would like to speak. Please do not use the chat. That's reserved for tech communication. And board members are also asked to have their video turned on as is possible, so you're visible to the viewing public. We all know sometimes we need a little body break, so please take care of yourselves. I am going to ask Donna to call the roll, please.
Okay, Holly Johnson.
Present.
Angela Van Kraus.
Present.
Mike Eister.
Here.
Austin Foldnagel.
Here.
Steve Mattel.
Here.
Rosie Pryor.
Here.
Lisa Fragola.
Present. Thank you. So I am going to take a little bit longer this evening with our land acknowledgement. October 11th is Indigenous Peoples Day, and it is a day that we do recognize here at the college. And I wanted to take a moment to also recognize it as a board, since our next board meeting will follow the Indigenous Peoples Day. It's a day to reflect and honor the legacy, sacrifice, and survival of the original caretakers of this land. Most importantly, I think it's a day to make visible the people that history and colonization have worked hard to erase. LCC sits on the ancestral homelands of the Kalapuya people who were forcibly removed in the 1880s. Their descendants are now citizens of the Confederate Tribes of the Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederate Tribes of Siletz Indians of Oregon. If you do go into our board docs, there is a link that provides more information about the tribes in Oregon. And I hope people will take the time to learn more about the original inhabitants and caretakers of this land. And I also appreciate that this board has made the commitment to having land acknowledgement at each of our meetings. And tonight, Shane Turner is going to go ahead and read that for us.
Thank you, Chair Fragola. We begin our meeting with the acknowledgement that the land we are on is the traditional homeland of the Kalapuya people. The Kalapuya were stewards of this very land for over 14,000 years before their traditional way of life was forever disrupted and destroyed. We start our meeting with humility and reverence for the original inhabitants, the Kalapuya.
Thank you, Shane. Okay, so our special meeting business is regarding the process and the advisory committee for the selection of the next president of Lane Community College. And we have an update from Deborah Butler. We have an action to take. And so I'll turn it over to Deborah.
Thank you, Chair Fragola. Let me approach this maybe by explaining the few things that I'm bringing you tonight, and then you can decide in which order you'd like to discuss them. First, you'll find in the board packet a full list of 15 members that are being recommended for your review and approval to sit on the Presidential Search Advisory Committee. This includes 2 additional members who have been added since you last met and reviewed this list. They've been added as at-large members and to provide additional representation from communities of color in the Lane County or Lane Community College District. So we have that list for your review and approval. We also have an update on the engagement efforts around engaging our community and our internal college stakeholders to request feedback regarding the presidential profile, which is being built right now by our ACCT search consultant in this presidential search. I'm pleased to share that I think in the board packet, the number is 600 community contacts were contacted at the time that this board packet was published on Friday. And that number is actually up closer to 750 now. And that includes business and industry partners, education partners in the community, service, local government, elected officials, alumni. So a big group of people. And so huge thanks to everyone who contributed to that list, and especially to those who reached out to connect with their own communities and contacts to get the word out and share the information and request feedback about the profile. We had our first internal forum today for employees to provide feedback on the presidential profile. That was hosted by Jill Wakefield, our consultant. And tomorrow will be our first evening community forum that is open and to which all community members are invited. So we hope to have good turnout there. The final thing that I'm bringing you for your consideration is a proposal to make a slight adjustment to the search timeline. And this is in response to some comments that we heard at a previous meeting from board members who were interested in becoming involved in the search process earlier in the process. And so this proposal is to change the interview process for the first round interviews to include the entire board in that interview process, rather than the original proposal, which was to have the search committee do those initial round of interviews. So the proposal would include extending the timeline for the interviews, which was originally 2 days on February 17th and 18th, and extending it through the weekend to allow some more time to schedule those interviews and so that everybody could participate. And that's also in the board packet, but I'm glad to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Why don't we go ahead and start with the Presidential Search Advisory Committee membership. I just want to clarify for people that at the last meeting, the board members did express a desire to officially vote on these appointments. And so that is why we're having the special meeting tonight. We have 2 more individuals that we are adding. Susan Cox, who is the VP of Public Policy and External Relations at Holt International. She is also a member of the Lane Transit District, as well as being connected to Bushnell University, one of our community partners, and is, I believe, a member as well of the LCC Foundation. Comes highly recommended. And then the other person that we are recommending is Miles Pendleton. Miles Pendleton is recently appointed or to be the new president of the Eugene Springfield NAACP chapter. And I just wanted to take a moment to read you just a short piece from the email that he sent me. He said, "Once again, thank you for presenting our organization with such a fantastic opportunity. Your consideration is greatly appreciated. Moreover, this is a true joy for me personally, as I spent many of my most formative summers at LCC participating in the Rites of Passage program as a youth. Opportunities to come full circle and pour into the next generation are equally rare as they are meaningful." So somebody who is very passionate about LCC and has had some really powerful experiences here to form his participation. So are there any questions or comments about these 2 additions to our advisory committee for the Presidential recruitment and selection.
I'd like to move approval of the list that is presented in the board packet.
See a second from Austin. Thank you, Austin. Angela, did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, but I can wait for Mike to speak to the
Great.
motion.
Thank you. Mike, did you want to speak to your motion?
I think it's an excellent list. I know several of the people on it. I think we've got a great variety of diversity on the list and very well qualified people.
Thank you. Angela?
Thank you. It sounds like Miles Pendleton is quite interested. I assume this is a dumb question, but Susan Cox is also interested and willing
Yes.
to serve.
Very much.
Stephanie?
We have communicated with her. And and so they did understand that it needed to come to the board first, but she is also very interested in serving. I'm just giggling because there was a little bit of a miscommunication around that. So thank you for asking. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion on the floor to approve the current list that we have in front of us for the advisory committee to the board. Again, this is an advisory committee. It is the board's responsibility to make this decision. Donna, would you call the roll, please?
Sure. Holly Johnson,
Is that a thumbs up?
oh,
Okay.
okay, thanks. Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Austin Folneggy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye. So that motion passes unanimously. So let's move on to the second piece of this special session, which we don't have a formal decision to make, but we thought we would include it now since we're on this topic. We have made some adjustments to the process based on feedback from our last board meeting that board members wanted to be engaged earlier in the process. And so are there any questions and comments about this? I will say that, remember, this is a process. The board is always able to refine it as we move through it. We want to be flexible, nimble, and responsive. Any questions, comments?
Really quick to
Go ahead, Austin.
really quick to move forward with this. Does it require a motion, or no? It's just is it just a conversation and a feel for the board?
We hadn't discussed it as a formal action because that would require us in the future to formally revise and adopt it. I'm not opposed to that idea, but your ad hoc committee will continue to bring updates to you, communicate with you, and take feedback. Angela?
I thought, Deborah, when you were giving us a little overview earlier, I thought you had said that the change was extending the February 17th timeline. It looks like it says February 17 to 18. Am I misreading something here?
No, you're not. Thanks for pointing that out. So actually, it's corrected in the language of the board docs description, but it hasn't been corrected on this worksheet. So, but the idea would be, you're absolutely right, that we would extend the interview period from the 17th and 18th, which is a Thursday, Friday, through the weekend. So we'd be looking at the 17th through the 20th to allow board members to make time for those interviews.
So we would be asking board members to hold that weekend so that we can conduct interviews. I'll just let you all know that is my birthday weekend. So you will get to spend my birthday with me doing interviews. Holly? So we're not hearing you currently, Holly. We heard you earlier when, I don't know if you had the headset in earlier. Mm-mm. Do you remember, did you do something last time that, okay, you want us to give you a minute to figure it out? Okay. Any other questions or comments? I would also point out, I think in the document that, oh, no, that does look correct now. I thought it said October 20th previously. Yeah, so I think October 21st might be a Thursday, but that board meeting is a Wednesday, correct, Deborah?
Yes, that's correct. I can make that correction. Thanks for pointing.
Okay, great. Holly, did you want to try again? And then I'll go, okay, Austin?
Yeah, overall, I do support this. The involvement of the board, I believe, is in this process is really important. And yeah, I look forward to taking this time to do this and to spend a birthday with you. So
Thanks. Thanks, Austin. Who knows? We might even get to be in person, fingers crossed. That would be lovely. Though for the first round of interviews, because it'll be a larger number, we are thinking it would make sense to do them digitally. That will also increase accessibility for candidates. So that is part of the process that we'll keep working on as a ad hoc committee. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I'm up. Mike, yes.
So I'm assuming that if we do that first round virtually, that even if there's someone local, that we would do a virtual interview with them rather than an in-person interview.
I think that would be equitable. Yes.
Okay, just want to confirm that.
Yeah, that is really good feedback and thinking to be providing. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to assume that's an old hand, Mike, and I'm going to go ahead and if there's nothing else from board members, Deborah, are you finished?
I am. Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. And I am going to go ahead and now close the October 6th special meeting of the Board of Education. Meeting is now closed. I will now call the October 6th work session of the Lane Community College Board of Education to order in order to continue conducting meetings in a manner that will help to combat the spread of COVID-19 and promote the safety and well-being of our community. This meeting is being held remotely. Donna, could you please let the notes acknowledge that all board members are present and that roll call was taken in the special meeting?
Will do.
Thank you. I'd like to adopt the agenda with flexibility by unanimous consent. Is there any objection to adopting the agenda with flexibility? Okay, seeing none, we have adopted the agenda with flexibility. Very exciting. So our first discussion item tonight is something that I am very excited about and I think is a really great project that Dr. Hamilton has been working on. A lot of benefits to our community as well as to the college. So we have an update on the federally qualified health clinic at the Cottage Grove satellite campus. Dr. Hamilton?
Oh, thank you so much, Chair Fragola. So I'm here tonight with our consultant for this project, Margot Helfand, to update the board on the project's progress and answer any of your questions. Your board packet provides a summary of the project, and it's actually been underway since 2018, but it was more formalized in 2020. The project is to partner with the county to lease space on our Cottage Grove location for a federally qualified health center. The college will still provide college services and programs on the other half of the building. The college will leverage this opportunity to provide allied health clinic internships and allied health programs on the College Grove site. In 2020, the board approved me to enter into agreement with the county to lease the space. And now that we've secured most of the money needed to start the project, our attorney has resumed contract negotiations. Margot Helpin is here to assist in answering your questions about this very exciting project.
Everybody.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to see you all. I know you got a lot of information about the project. I came in to the project in December of 2019. I was hired by essentially the partners to convene the group and formalize the partnership so that everybody's roles were clear and the work plan was clear. And the group has worked really diligently to get to the point where we are today, essentially shovel ready with an architect hired. And we're just completing the fundraising for the renovation of the building. The thing I would say is from the beginning, every single member, every single partner that's been involved in this project has been all in. And I think every partner is aware that this project really leverages the individual mission of each organization in a really fundamental way. School district, the South Lane School District, Lane County, LCC, and then with the local voice of Be Your Best. So have I left anybody out? Don't think so. So I'm open to answering your questions. I know you received a lot of information, so anything I can answer. I don't want to read through the slides, so.
Getting a thumbs up from Steve on that.
Okay.
Mike,
I'm assuming that the college would have no liability for any of the medical processes that are under the supervision of the county. I just want to confirm that.
Yeah, I'll respond to that, and Mike can too. When we do the lease agreement, those types of there's always many clauses of insurance, so that we'll be responsible for student learning insurances. They'll be responsible, and you can be sure there'll be pages of liability written in that contract.
Michael Blade's given a thumbs up to that too. He's going to work on the pages of contract. Angela, followed by Austin.
Thank you. I'm also really excited about this project. It makes so much sense. It's been a long time in the making. It's a lovely collaborative community effort. I'm delighted. I have one question. It's a dumb question, which apparently I'm full of tonight. On, I think the third handout, page 15, says federal dollars 1.5. There are no units. In order to get to 3.7 million, I'm guessing that federal dollars is 1.5 million. Is that correct?
That's
Yeah.
It's the $1.5 million that recently DeFazio committed to, and he actually recently came to an on-site visit at the building. So correct. Sorry, we left off those zeros.
Great. Nice catch, Angela, and thank you, Congressman Peter DeFazio, for that investment from the infrastructure plan.
Correct.
Austin, I saw your hand.
Yeah. First, I want to just share the excitement that everyone has for this, and I'm actually really excited about the high school CTE opportunities here. And is it mostly going to be with South Lane, or is there going to be other opportunities for like the McKenzie School District? Others, I know obviously South Lane is a partner in this collaborative process, but there will be opportunities for the entire county or the southeast county.
Right now, it's South Lane School District that we're working with. I don't know, March, maybe you can answer whether we haven't worked with other school districts as yet.
Yeah, but this one's easy because we work with all the districts on all our programs. So this will be what I call a premier partnership. So they will obviously have first shot at some of the clinical internships, but I can almost assure you down the road, there'll be other schools involved because not one school rarely takes up all of the capacity in the space.
So just a quick follow-up question. When's the first cohort of high school students that would be able to go through this?
Well, that really depends on when we complete the fundraising. When we complete the fundraising, we'll be 9 months from opening. So that's the timeline that we're working with. So hopefully we'll complete the fundraising before the end of the year, which would make it, by fall of 2020, we would be ready to implement the first program. But that's pending the successful funding.
Understood.
Great. I have Rosie, and then I put myself in the queue.
I just want to add one thing about, there is a classroom within the clinic that does will be available for the high schools. And I think one of the beautiful things is it's available during the school day when the high school kids would need to access it. And then on the evenings and weekends will be available for the Lane students. So the same classroom will be used extensively. I'm sorry, just want to add that.
Thanks. Rosie?
Thank you. Very exciting project. Is looking forward to this for a long time, for the time that it's taken to get this far. Is our foundation involved in this fundraising? Who has point on this fundraising?
So we've discussed it, and I have encouraged the foundation to look at the classroom piece, because that's their job, is to support our students. So literally just today we spoke about it, Rosie. So there'll be more conversation on how they can support it. We definitely could use scholarships, as you know, for entry level. Anything non-credit, that's sometimes out of pocket. So there's going to be plenty of opportunity for our foundation to be involved.
So in the packet and the information, it mentioned that there's outreach going on to health and business community partners to identify skills or components of CTE programs. I'm curious how that outreach is going. I know it's kind of this unusual situation because we're finishing the fundraising and then it's 9 months from that completion of fundraising. But how's the outreach going? And do we have any sense of what kinds of other programming we might have available there in addition to the healthcare programs?
So there's primarily two buckets. There's the dental bucket, and then there's the primary care bucket. And we are in constant contact with Peace Health, and that they are a support partner here. So they are providing information on that. But as we all know, there's also ambulatory care centers and other types of opportunity for those jobs. So Grant Matthews is on top of that. He's working with the area. Right now, there's a big shortage in, for example, certified medical assistants. So we are working with all partners to increase those programs. And I would not be surprised if that becomes a premier program down in Cottage Grove once we're set up.
Great, thank you. Mike?
Yes, I'd just like to add my voice of commendation to this project. We've taken underutilized facility and turned it into an incredible partnership that a lot of people are going to benefit from. And it'll be more, if not totally fully utilized, it'll be more utilized, and maybe even generate a little bit of revenue for the college. So way to go, team.
Thank you.
When the DeFazio came and people came down for the site visit, the architects were able to take you through a virtual visit of what the building's going to look like. And if that's something that people would like to see, we can probably arrange for that. It's pretty exciting.
That would be great. We had originally planned to hold our meeting at the Cottage Grove Satellite Campus tonight when we plan the fall's calendar. And we of course, are not able to do that this evening. So if that could be shared with board members, that would be wonderful. Thank you, Margot.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from board members? All right, thank you. I'm going to move us on to our next discussion item. We have 30 minutes for this. So Marge, do you want to go ahead and start us off?
Yeah, thank you. So about a year ago, as you know, just like I don't want to keep giving you context, we started with appointing the steering committee to develop the goals and objectives for our strategic plan. The committee completed their task, College Council reviewed it and recommended the draft to the board. So that was in July. The board reviewed it and asked that we bring it back, since that was the first time they were really taking you were all taking a good look at it, bring it back in September for discussion. In addition to the feedback of the board meeting, I also received examples of wording and comments about what they were hoping for, we are all hoping for in the final draft. So staff, this is only really about a week of work. Staff took the feedback, and over that next week, they created a sample of edits for the goals and objectives to respond to some of the feedback, and also to respond to some of the accreditation standards. So we're asking the board tonight to take a look at a few things. Look at the original committee draft from July, look at some of the sample edits, and provide feedback to staff so that we can better understand your wishes. I think the main thing I want to mention was the really good work that this committee did. We are just so happy that they committed several months of their time on this. We also, I want you to notice on the top where it's the mission, there was a general interest in looking to see if we could have a stronger focus on equity. So there's some suggested bold words in there that could rather easily increase the equity focus. Staff would also like clarification if the board would like to have the DEI focus integrated throughout the goals, in addition to goal 3. That's how the original document was set up. But then we also heard that there was some suggestion to consolidate them more. So that clarity tonight would be great. So at this time, if you can take a look at the mission again, look at the main goals, give us feedback. We're more than happy to continue to refine based on your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look first at the mission statement, since it's right at the top there, and it does have some small changes to it, though potentially significant. And this is something that we've kind of been approaching from a variety of angles, discussed it in a variety of venues, and we can provide feedback tonight on whether or not we do want to make some changes to the mission statement, or if we like some of the suggestions or recommendations here, or if you don't want to make any changes, that is an acceptable form of feedback as well. Does anybody have any thinking just on the mission piece at this moment? Austin.
Overall, I appreciate the additions, and yeah, I think it's straightforward and simple. So yeah, I appreciate the addition of the language, and yeah, and that we are the community's college.
And Rosie.
I think it looks great too. I just would like to flag for my colleagues on the board that one word that has always kind of given me pause, which is a better way of saying than troubled. It's not that it troubles me, it just gives me pause. It's the word comprehensive. I think the word comprehensive, when it is applied to a community college, has a specific meaning that I'm not any longer clear after 10 years on the board that we're in a position financially or otherwise to deliver on. And so I just would ask my colleagues on the board to give some thought to whether or not including the word comprehensive commits Lane to something that we're not really able to deliver on. Perhaps Marge can do a better job than I could ever do in explaining what comprehensive means in the context of a community college.
Marge, you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Yeah, thank you. So in the community college world, or in the let me start this, in the two-year college world, you can be a technical school or you can be a comprehensive college. And I'll let Paul jump in if he wants to help out with this. So we consider ourselves community college as comprehensive when we start with Dev Ed, we offer certificates, 2-year degrees. So that is not just a straight up CTE or technical. Paul, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Marge. The Rosie, the word comprehensive here in this context means that we offer both career and technical education, transfer programming, and also developmental education. There are many states that are organized where they have separate technical schools from transfer schools, and since in Oregon those two areas are united under the community colleges in Oregon. Oregon then defines community colleges as being comprehensive if they deliver all of those: developmental education, transfer, and career technical education.
So if we're not in any danger of losing any one of those component parts, then I feel a lot more comforted about using that word.
Going to go on to Holly. No, I can't hear you, Holly. No, do you want to try and take a minute to figure it out? Do you want to type it in the chat and I can read it? Okay. All right. Let me know if you would like to try and join on your phone, okay? All right, so I have Angela and then I have myself in the queue and then I'm going to go to Steve.
Thank you. I actually didn't have any thoughts about the word comprehensive until that discussion, but now having listened to the discussion, I'm wondering if it's necessary. Is it necessary to specify the word comprehensive if that's just the way that we're organized at the state level?
Marge?
Well, I've been a reviewer most of my career. I would say yes, because it defines who you are.
Thank you. Okay, I know this may be a little bit of wordsmithing on my part, but we do have a whole string of descriptors here. I personally would like to see quality first. We provide quality, comprehensive, accessible, inclusive, learning-centered educational opportunities. I think it makes that quality apply to all of those components, which I think is a really important component of our mission, that we are providing a quality experience here. I appreciate the additions that have been made. Steve?
Sorry about that, having a difficult time hitting the unmute button. My question is not so much about the mission statement, but about some of the goals themselves. Are we ready for that, to move to that?
We're not
discussion?
moving on to that yet, no, but we should be shortly. You want to just keep your hand up?
I guess I will.
Okay, great. Is there anyone else who would like to provide feedback on the mission statement at this time?
Can I just ask what's been meant by learning-centered? What's the opposite of learning-centered educational opportunities?
Marge?
Great question, Rosie, because in years past, colleges tended to be teaching centered. And although that sounds like it's a good thing, you want to put the focus that the students are learning. So we are looking that students first. So, and we've gone beyond even saying students to say learning. So student learning first. We're putting their needs ahead of ours.
Angela, was it about the mission statement? Okay, great. Go ahead.
Thanks. My comment was also about learning centered, and I'm going to feel really dumb as I make this comment because I know that there are folks at the college with PhDs in English, but I'm confused about the space after the dash in learning centered. I don't usually see that, and I know that's silly.
Could we potentially flag it for somebody to check in some type of academic
much higher
dictionary? Great.
Yep.
Somebody will
Thank
check
you.
that. Thank you. So Holly, would you like me to share that? You want me to share that? Okay. So Holly has provided me with a message. We're going to really be nimble tonight. She said, how about by providing comprehensive student services that promote student success? And so Holly, is that something for when we get to the goals, or is it for when we get to the goals for goal 1? Okay. All right. We're almost there. Great. So I will hold on to that. So is there anyone else with a comment about the mission? I'm feeling like most people are comfortable, if not pleased, with some of these changes and with the wording. And so is that enough? Is that enough feedback, Marge, on the mission?
Yeah, I want to repeat what I heard just so we leave here
Yep.
with no misunderstanding. So everybody seems to like the addition of the words to focus on our equity DEI mission. And we're going to take the quality and put that up to the front of the line.
I would appreciate that. So that
Okay.
it emphasizes everything else.
Yeah,
We
thank you.
we will bring this back at some point and officially vote on it. So,
Thank you.
yep. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to the goals, as well as some discussion around objectives. We have 2 examples that we are noodling. The one that we had from the Strategic Plan Advisory Committee, I believe College Council has not seen a document yet, or started working with it. We had an advisory committee, and one that staff has engaged with in the last week, and we're providing feedback on context around both of these, and knowing that we're not quite done yet, right? We're going to actually slow this process down, give the board a lot of time to engage with it, as well as get through an incredibly busy October. So Steve.
Yeah, I think my question is probably for Richard. So I'm still having a hard time with the differentiation between goal 1 and 3. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you see those two as different from each other, and the measurements that would be undertaken by each.
Sure. Goal 1 and the success and achievement are based on completions and standard academic progress, where we increase the completion of students in their chosen program of study. We also mark it through the National Student Clearinghouse on those whose program to study lead them to a transfer to a 4-year institution. This is in goal 3, we're looking through an equity lens. We're looking at the disaggregated data based on the number of completers and transfer students that we have, are they representative of our community? One, are we in alignment with the state? And in many cases, we already exceed the alignment of the state in performance. But those are significantly different, and not because one is focusing on a compliance directive whereby we are funded from the Department of Ed, both for our state funding and through our FAFSA modeling, Pell Grants, scholarships, et cetera. The second is how we have closed, in goal 3, it is how we are essentially closing the gaps and the work we do with the completions. I hope that's clear. Please ask more questions if it's not.
Do you intend to develop additional objectives under goal 3?
That's what we're working on right now to close the gaps. Yes, sir.
Okay, well then I'll hold off till then. It feels incomplete to me, but you're telling me that's intentional at this point in time, so I'll let it be.
That's great feedback, Steve, that it feels incomplete. What seems missing to you there?
Well, I'll leave it to Richard. I'll give him the time that he needs to keep working at it. I will say about item number 2 that that doesn't exactly feel like that it's about equity to me. That feels like, it's about the student's worldview or something like that when they're complete with their 2 years at Lane, which is not about the equity that they experienced while they're at Lane. So, but that's, it's to some extent a minor quibble. But what I hear you saying is that there's more work to be done, so I'll hold off.
Okay. Any input you have on that is going to be welcomed by staff as they work on this. Austin?
I just had a clarifying question for President Hamilton in regards to what role does the College Council play in this, especially in the development piece, in hearing like recommendations, complaints, or anything along those lines? What's the College Council's role in all this?
Great question, Steve. College Council isn't in the development. They're more in the review and the approval. We bring many plans to them, but they see plans across the whole spectrum. So the idea is they get a fairly completed plan. They give input. They may even suggest a recommended change, and then they'll either move it back or move it to the next level.
Got it. So is it kind of like they make recommendations, and those recommendations are brought to us essentially, or is it just essentially like a review? They're okay with it type of analysis.
With this, yes. With other things, they're much more heavily involved. Yeah. They understood that the steering committee worked long and hard on this. So they reviewed it and they felt it was ready to go up to you because they knew there'd be changes at your end. I think conceptually, though, when they looked at the first draft, they moved it on. I just want to mention, because Steve, you brought up a really good point. So this is great feedback. If you go back and look at the first version, the July version, there was a lot of detail in that. So if the board likes that level of detail, I need to hear that. That's a good thing, because we weren't sure if you were going for a much more simplistic set of objectives or more detail. And if you look at the July 10th version, there was lots of good detail there.
Okay, thanks, Marge. I have Angela, and then I've put myself in the queue. And Angela, do you mind if I just check with Holly? She left and came back. Holly, you want to go ahead and give a shout out, see if we can hear you?
Hi.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I've got Angela, I've got myself in the queue. Holly, do you want to be put in the queue since
yes, actually I do. Thank you.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Angela. Thank you.
Thanks. I think maybe I got a little confused in reading these in advance. So just to make sure that I have properly level set, we have 3 versions in front of us. We have the original from July, the board suggestions that we made when we met in September, and then the October 6th is the incorporation of our suggestions from September. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd rather say you have 2 versions. You look at July, That's the original. Then we took some of the suggestions and notes and we came up with what's called the October 6th version.
Okay. In
Thanks.
that case, I'm looking at October 6th version. Thank you for the clarification, Marge. And I would like to suggest, and I don't have a replacement word, but I do like the language sort of from the board suggestions for goals 2 and 6. The word established to me suggests that we aren't doing the thing right now. Like it would be something that we would build brand new. And I don't think that that's accurate. And so I feel like establish is maybe not the right word here, because it's more of, you know, building enrollment, not establishing something new around enrollment necessarily in my mind. So my feedback.
Thanks, Angela. Holly, did you want to, I had myself in the queue, but I'll go after you if you want.
Just really quick, thank you, Chair Fragala. I want to circle back to what President Hamilton said about the July draft. I thought the July draft had so much more substance and more details, and I appreciated that. And now looking at the October one, it just looks watered down and kind of stripped down, and it's more sterile and status quo. So when I look at the mission statement as a prospective student coming into this college and viewing their mission statement, I want to feel confident that they are promoting student success. I just feel like the October version is just, I think it's not enough. I actually appreciated the details from the July version a little bit more. So I'm just hoping that at some point this can be revisited and we can go further. I don't see student services mentioned anywhere, which kind of bothers me because I mean, student services is like makes up everything that student success is about. I think it needs a lot more work. Thanks, Lisa.
Okay, I have myself in the queue and then go back to Angela. So I would like to say that I feel like we had one draft in July. I do agree with the restructuring of the goals that the board discussed, where we made a cleaner identification of student success and achievement and enrollment and a very specific equity goal. At that time, we did discuss that we wanted an equity goal that clearly focused on equity. And we did discuss this idea of not integrating it through. I will say now, when I look at the October draft and I don't see it integrated through each of the other goals, that I find it to be problematic. And I feel like it creates something, it creates a strategic plan that is not putting us forward as an institution that is fully committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So for example, under goal 1, I would still want to be seeing something in there about assessing programs using the equity lens to reduce barriers and improve student success. I would also want to see that in terms of retention and completion, right? So I guess I'm wanting us to have a strategic plan that has vision. The October draft to me seems to be trying to do the same approaches and expecting different results. We're coming out of a pandemic. We have students that have not potentially not had access to programs. It's a different educational landscape. We have a lot of challenges and a lot of changes in terms of workforce development and how we approach education. And we know the students we serve are going to need more services. So I'm looking for something that is a little bit more visionary. And I'm also looking for something that acknowledges the work that's been done for the last year by the advisory committee and the stakeholders. And though I appreciate the real clarity in the goal language in the October statement, I feel like it's gotten really far away from the July statement. I also would like to see something added about student services. Very, very important in terms of student success and achievement. I'm not sure why we're not adding in the enrollment section something about high school students, and much more specific language about CTE programs and workforce development. On goal 4, I know goal 4 goal 4 is engaging in continuous program. Why would we only have the SEM there and not all of the college strategic plans? Right. So I do have a lot of feedback about the differences between what I saw in July that I don't see in October, and I don't have to say them all tonight, but I would like to be able to provide further written feedback as we move forward with this process. Angela, and then Rosie.
Thank you. I feel like what I probably should have said the first time I spoke about this was a big thank you to staff for putting this together and for making really significant revisions based on our feedback. I think maybe our feedback, based on what I'm hearing and sort of what I'm thinking through, was not necessarily aligned with what we really wanted. In my mind, I really like the July draft. I just wanted the goals to be more clear and less wordy, and basically everything else can stay. And so I really prefer the goal language in the October draft, but yeah, I think that maybe our request to have it sort of pared down, we might have gone too far in that direction. I think that there's a lot of really important value and items that are listed in the July version. I think what I was hoping for that I didn't see in July and I don't see in October is something more along the lines of SMART goals. I think Richard indicated that that would come later once we have sort of more of this built out. So that's not a concern that I feel like I need to raise here, but just sort of keeping a focus on making sure that we have goals that we are able to measure and determine whether we're successful or not. But my sort of high level take is the new goal language is much more clear and concise, and I like it. And I would like to bring back almost everything from the objectives and representative strategies from July.
Thank you, Angela. Rosie?
Thank you. I guess I have a different perspective pretty fundamentally from Lisa's point of view. What I thought I heard in our retreat when we spent 2 hours discussing where equity belongs in these goal statements was a desire on the part of the board to elevate equity where it is undeniably visible and to call it out in a goal statement. Maybe a way to address the observation that Lisa has made about equity is to make it our number 2 goal or our number 1 goal. I mean, maybe it needs to be somehow repositioned in the list of goals so that it's much more, it receives much more emphasis in the mind of the reader who encounters these goal statements. One of the observations I have about what we received as a work product to look at in our retreat, which I guess was the July version, is that there was way too much detail there. We weren't just looking at goal statements. We were looking at goal statements and objective statements and strategy statements. And so when I typed up our notes, which is identified here as one of your attachments, I was endeavoring to try to sort objective statements from strategy statements. And I would really encourage the board to stay out of that strategies, implementation strategies work, because that's not what we were elected to do. We were elected to set direction. And if we can agree on 5 or 6 cogent goals for the next 5-year horizon, that's providing a lot of clarity for administration, and particularly for an incoming new president. I don't think it's our job to get down into the how these goals or these objectives should be accomplished. I mean, it's up to administration to tell us how they propose to do that and what kind of resources are going to be needed to do that. So I still like better the work that the board did at our retreat in terms of identifying goals. I have questions like, we said increase student success. This version says increase student success and achievement. Is there a difference between student success and achievement? Is there a reason why we need to start getting wordy in our goal statements, or can we keep this simple? We agreed that we need to build enrollment. Enrollment is on the decline, significantly on the decline. We need to build enrollment. I think at this point, over the next 5 years, the idea that we can establish sustainable enrollment is a bit of a pipe dream. I don't think that's going to happen. And I don't think we should saddle the administration or an incoming president with that kind of a goal, where really all we're asking is build enrollment, get it back up to where we would like to see it and we would feel comfortable to see it, and where the financial remuneration that flows from enrollment at all levels, federal, state, and local, will support our being a comprehensive community college. So I'm still kind of personally more interested in elevating equity with a bright spotlight on it. I don't really want to bury it in all of these different goal statements. I want to see it right up there front and center, because our president told us in our retreat, we're not there yet. We have a lot of work to do. And I would like to see us commit in that bold and brave a way to doing it.
Thank you for that, Rosie. And I think that is a great idea of putting it first. I did just want to clarify that I agree with you. At the retreat, we did make a decision to not integrate it and to put it in one place. My realization was that once it was like that, I started to notice it as lacking. And so it was just a realization of my own. I'm interested to see what we can do in terms of, as Steve also recognized, goal 3 needs more development. Maybe once goal 3 is more developed, then it will balance out for me. Mike, I saw your hand. Did you have a comment that you wanted to make? Feedback?
No, I took it down on purpose. I pass.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Steve?
Yeah, just very briefly to throw my support to Rosie's sort of broad-based comment, which is that this really ought to be a high-level document with very short, crisp, clear statements. And that's the direction we were working towards a couple of weeks ago at the retreat. And then we have to trust staff. They're the implementers. They manage this, right? They're going to come back at some point afterwards, after they have absorbed, these high-level goals that we have set, and will tell us, like, well, here's the programs that we're going to put in place to help achieve that, and the metrics that we'll put in place to track our success and report back on an annual basis. Our job is to, we might give some feedback, say, well, that doesn't seem like enough programmatic work, or those metrics don't seem right. That's our job as well. But I do worry that we're getting ourselves too down in the weeds. And if we continue, then you end up with what a lot of organizations end up with, which is, you sooner or later, everybody just says whatever it takes to get this thing done. And then it is not actually a document that drives the institution. And we're headed down that path right now.
Thanks, Steve. So you will notice that Marge and I did decide, we discussed and deliberately left the strategies off of the October document because, as Rosie pointed out, the strategies really are those operational features, and we're really endeavoring to make the focus on the goals and the objectives. So I agree with making that the focus. Rosie, did you have another comment? Okay, thank you. So, wow, we are pretty much at time right there. So that, I hope that conversation was useful. Marge, did you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, just point of clarity on the large goals. I think myself, staff, your comments were spot on. I think we can run with them. Thank you. But I don't want to misinterpret the large goal statements. I think we're okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will be financial though, right? I just want to make sure 5 will be solely financial. Okay. And 6, we're going to be having an infrastructure, but I think I heard comments from some of you. We want to make sure we call out human, physical, so there's no question those are critical and important and separate. We good?
Correct.
Okay.
And I
Thank
do
you.
think we said sustainability as well should be sustainable infrastructure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
We've got another comment from Rosie.
Sorry, I was just doing a quick compare to kind of what our discussion sounded like at the retreat and what we have here in this October version. And my anxiety about this October version is that it's just a little mushy. We're looking at a 5-year horizon. What do we need to do around people, bricks and mortar, technology in the next 5 years? And how do you, once again, a resilient and sustainable infrastructure, come on. How with respect, how realistic is that? What do though we need to accomplish with respect to people, with respect to technology, with respect to brick and mortars over the next 5 years? That's to me, what that goal statement should say. And I think it's a 25, 50-year goal to establish a resilient, sustainable infrastructure, but 5 years following a pandemic, following declining enrollment, I think this strategic plan needs to be as realistic as possible. And I don't feel comfortable with, we value and we engage and we leverage. No, specifically, what is it that we need to do in the next 5 years? Does it have to do with certain kinds of people? Does it have to do with certain bricks and mortar? Does it have to do with certain technologies? If so, let's say that in our goal statement. And so when we talked about it as a board, we talked about identifying the strategic investments. So maybe the goal is we need to make strategic infrastructure investments. And then our objective statements should be, what are they? What over the next 5 years are the strategic infrastructure investments that this college needs to make? So I just ask us to be not quite so lofty and too generic. And it's just, you can't get your arms around it. You can't get any purchase with that kind of a statement. I want to be able to look back in 5 years and say, did we do it? Here's what we said we needed to do. Did we do it?
I have Holly in the queue, and then Austin, did you want to go? Okay, Holly.
Just really quick, I'm just wondering where safety, providing a safe environment fits, if anywhere in the plan, in the mission statement, in the goals. I don't think I'm finding it. Thank you.
Mhm. You sure, Austin?
Well, you're twisting my arm here. I really sympathize with what Rosie's saying there, and also at the same time, sometimes we kind of have to. Vague is not the right word, but sometimes we have to be broad with some of our strategic goals because there is a lot of unknowns in the next 5 years. In fact, there's been a lot of unknowns in the last 18 months, and yeah. So I really do sympathize with what you're saying, and at the same time, though, we also approve a budget that focuses on certain goals, objectives, and puts money behind those goals, objectives, and so forth. So, yeah. So yes. So with that, what I'm going to be doing with this strategic plan as we go into things like the budgeting process and so forth is kind of understand what is kind of the intent behind the strategic goals and how can we put money behind these goals. And I think I'm trying to remember the last time I went through a strategic plan process. That is what in a strategic plan that was really broad in its goals and objectives and the statements of those strategic plans. That is how I kind of reconciled with that. So I guess like that's the kind of big thing is that we need to look at these goals and then review these goals, especially around the time period that we're going into the budgetary process. So that's really all I wanted to say about the matter. And I really appreciate the thoughtful conversation around this.
Thank you, Austin. And I think you just gave us a whole new agenda item for the future that we will need to pay attention to. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciated that conversation as well. And I'm going to move us on to discussion item C, which is our COVID, I believe also vaccination implementation update. And that's from Dr. Hamilton. Marge?
Okay, thank you. So you've got a pretty thorough summary in the background. And again, for context, we approved fully vaccinated campus with exemptions in July. In September, we clarified that we would only accept medical and religious exemptions. We then began the process to upload and verify medical exemptions. We are now requiring an upload of written attestation on an OHA form for religious exemptions. We have a COVID operations team meeting weekly, working through these details. We have a COVID advisory team that meets with me weekly to advise me on issues and problems that they see and to help us work through these. Our goal is to have all systems in go on or sooner than October 21st. Richard tells us we are on time and on task with our IT strategies to meet this target date. Student Affairs is in communication with the students about them having to upload their vaccine cards. Shane is on task informing employees of the mandate and also continues to work with our employees who need accommodations. We have a team that's ready to do vaccine verification. We have Mackenzie Willamette on campus Tuesdays providing COVID testing, and I've got the full team here to answer any of your questions.
Okay, I have Mike and then Austin, and then I'm going to put myself in the queue. Thank you.
So Marge, I just wanted to be clear, that October 21st, that is a target date that we hope to go back to in-class, face-to-face learning.
No.
Oh, okay. I'm glad I
That's
asked.
the goal. That is that all the IT systems will be
Okay.
in place for the uploading. Will and when I don't know if you want to take hands first, but I'll let Paul talk about the instruction. because instruction's going to morph a little more slowly, Michael, because we want to make sure we got an awful lot more information to find out on what's going on in the county.
Thanks,
So
Marge.
what, just one second. So Mike, were you just asking for a clarification on the date, or did you want to know when students are coming back to instruction?
Well, I realize you may not know the answer to that question, but I am curious, do we have a notion? Do we have are we leaning a direction? Do we have a target, I guess?
Great. Paul, did you want to address that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Lisa. So we started the term prior to moving. Our goal was to be we were on target to be about 40 to 45% of enrollments having some kind of in-person activity. With the movements that we've made, that number's down around 20% right now. Of our enrollments involve some in-person activity. Some of that could be as simple as a weekend boot camp or something. We're really trying to minimize that. To protect, I think, the continuity of instruction and to put the least amount of, I think, stress on our students and faculty. Courses that could be moved remote were for the most part moved remote for the entire term, even though we do have a target date to evaluate and maybe try to have some more in-person activity starting October 25th. From an instruction point of view, most courses that could be moved remote were moved remote for the entire term. So we might see a little bit of movement there, but I don't think a lot. I think what our plan is and our hope is that where we will see significantly more in-person instruction, because I just think we have to be able to get to a point where we can provide that, will be for winter term.
Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome.
Austin?
So obviously, the week of the 24th, we're going to be, and actually the week before the week of the 24th, we're going to essentially be analyzing the COVID cases from the county. I hope we'll be talking to Lane County Health throughout that week and so forth. Like, what's kind of the the timelines of like regular checkups of like COVID numbers in the county and stuff like that for analysis of what week 24 is going to look like.
Marge,
Or the week of the 24th, rather.
Marge, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Laura and I had a good conversation. Laura Green is our clinic director, and I call her our little medical director for this whole project. And she is in constant contact with Dr. Guzman and Dr. Lutke. So what we're going to be, we're all getting cautiously optimistic that the incidence is coming down. So obviously we're looking for two things, right? We're looking for the vaccine rate to go up, and we're looking for the incidence rates to come down. So we're putting together a grid, like a checklist of all the things. And it's not a perfect system, Austin. What it is, though, is a list of things that we're like a matrix that we're going to look at. We're going to look at the county, the state, the local incidents. We're going to look at what's going on with testing, what's going on with our students. So we're starting to look now. I think we're at a point where I'm looking at a calendar for the next 3 weeks. We want to watch the patterns, because if the patterns go in the right direction, that'll be awesome. If they're erratic, that's going to be more problematic.
Just a brief follow-up question.
Yep.
And would we also be looking at the percentage of vaccinated and unvaccinated in our student and staff population? Yes. Excellent.
Yes.
And do we have an updated number on that?
No, that's what we're waiting for the launch date, because that's when we'll get accurate data.
Understood. Thank you.
So I have myself in the queue. And so in the packet, it says October 25th, but Marge, I heard you say we were going to be ready to go on October 21st.
I was wrong. 3 people texted me. The words came out of my mouth incorrectly. It's the 24th. I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so the current plan for students to be able to upload their vaccination card is going to go live on the 24th. I'm curious, how many students are going to need to submit documentation, have it reviewed and verified, to have the holds released so that they can register? And is it's 1 week between the 24th and the 1st. I'm not clear on how long the registration window is. So I'm just wondering, is that doable? Are we going to really be able to make that happen in such a short period of time that everybody will be able to upload, have their hold released, and be able to register? I know we do rolling dates for enrollment as well. I remember that being explained. So I don't know if Richard, you want to address that? Or Mark?
Yeah,
Yes.
this is a two-parter. Let's start with Richard because he's got a good handle on what the system can do.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Currently, we have about a 6,700 head count for the fall term. I'm estimating, a large percentage of them will return. So those will need to fill out the form. If you're online, it's a very swift process. If you're online only, if you're going to take person to person, then you will have to upload either your vaccination card or an exemption. That then creates the place for the review team to go there and review it. And once it's reviewed, it's immediate release. There's near constant communication between you applying your vaccination card or exemption form in the system and somebody being able to review it. Once it's reviewed, it is a seamless transfer to over to Banner so you can enroll. Now, the rate at which that's going to happen, I don't know, because that's what we're going to have to determine. And we're training for that to see how long it takes to actually go through a case. Scenarios are pretty quick. We've contacted other colleges here in the state and outside of the state. It does not take, in their process, it does not take very long for the people to do it, but it's HR. We actually have to fill the desk to do it. So how many people we're going to assign, that's still in deliberation. We know that academic and student affairs are getting those folks ready to review the cases. So we have a very large pool of people to work to review them as quickly as possible. Once that's done, you go in and can register without challenge. The system is also set up, because we're somewhat of a moving target, that we can track boosters, we can track testing. Now, how that's going to be implemented, that is still under discussion, but we have those capabilities. That's what the product can do. I'm going to stop there and let Paul address on the instruction side, to pick up from that point.
Yeah, I mean, in lines with, part of it is we are doing our best to put together a team of folks that can jump in as soon as these start coming in. We anticipate having a window of about a week to 10 days where we were going to be really encouraging current students to submit their cards or exemption requests. There's only the requirement for individuals that are for current students that are currently in person. However, I do anticipate that number will be larger than our current in-person population, because many of those students that were forced remote this term will want to have some in-person instruction next term, and will know that they'll have to have their cards or exemptions reviewed prior to being able to register. We start registering on the 1st with some special populations. While we do phase it in, that phase in is very quick here over the period of about a week before we get to the point where any current student can be registering. So we know we have a short window, and we'll do our best to complete that. We typically get about 1,500 students that register in the first week in a general term in a typical fall. So the registration window stays open until into the first week of the term. So students register throughout all of winter break, leading up into that first day of winter term. But that first group of students is probably going to be in the neighborhood of 1,000 or so that we're going to have to try to get reviewed and holds lifted during that first week. We have 6 to 8 people already being trained to be able to do that. And as the product gets a little bit more developed and we know how to train people more completely on the workflow, we'll be bringing more people on to review those first wave of documentation.
Thank you. Any other questions and comments? Sounds like a big lift. I hope that we are investing the resources necessary. Any other questions and comments? Mike?
I'm just wondering, have we put, are we routinely putting word out publicly so that the general public can keep track of this thing as it continues to evolve?
Brett, you want to respond on public communications?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Mike,
How are we
you wanna-
communicating? How are we communicating to the outside? I mean, we talked about the inside, but like the website, things like that for the outside world.
As far as uploading, are we talking about uploading documents into the submission system or just the vaccine requirement itself?
Well, I guess I don't know that they need to know all the sausage making, but for example, I have been telling people that we were thinking of trying to be ready to go in person in late October. I'm not sure where I got that, but that was my understanding. And tonight was my first understanding that we're really talking about winter term before we go in person. And so I think that is the information that seems to me to be evolving that I'd like to be able to keep the public up to date on.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the communications team goes, right now we're looking at, who are we welcoming to campus? And right now it's only for college approved events. We do have the policy right now that non-essential in-person events are we're not holding those at the moment. But when those resume, our plans are based around how do we, first and foremost, how do we communicate with those who will be coming to campus for those events? And so a lot of that communication will have to be done through those groups that may be hosting events on campus. The general public, prospective students, folks like that, we are hoping to use things such as the vaccination lottery that we'll be doing later on in the term here to, first of all, encourage students to get their forms in as quickly as possible to give our folks more time to process them and get their holds lifted so that they can register on time. But also we want prospective students and the public that's thinking about coming to Lane to know that the system's up and running too. So we'll get communications out about that. We'll start first with the employees and students that we want to get through the system, but then we'll follow up with folks that may be new to the system for winter term.
Mark?
Well, my point is that we are the community's college. The broad community is interested in what we're doing and the pace at which we're doing it, just for their information, if for no other reason. Not because they want to come to campus necessarily, because they want to know what's going on with their college. So that's what I'm suggesting, that we need to keep people posted on the big benchmarks.
Marge, did you want to respond to that or add?
I just want to let Mike know he is correct. He did hear it here. We did say, as I recall, last time we met, that starting the 25th, we would look to see if we could open up some classrooms. Mike, you did hear correctly. What we've added, though, is we were just being extra cautious. We want to make sure the rates are continuing to come down, because we don't want to invite anybody back unless we're super comfortable. And Paul, if I'm not mistaken, it would be, the phrase is invited back, not have to come back. So we're working on this with a lot of assurances.
So I'm not criticizing the decision. I'm just saying that as this situation evolves, and it does evolve because nobody knows what the virus is going to do next, as it evolves, I'd like us to make an effort to keep the public posted on what we're doing as our decisions change.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And I'll commit to that, Mike. We will most likely send out another press release when we have an action that the college is taking, just like we did last time. And when we sent out the last press release, we did get coverage in the paper and on KLCC and a few other news outlets. And almost always when we have the monthly update to the board with a COVID update on plans for campus, The media has been tracking that. At the last board meeting, there was a follow-up piece in the Register Guard with an update. So we will make sure that the community is aware of what's happening.
Great, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands. I did have one more question. So I heard, I think it might have been Richard when he was explaining the process that the online students, students that are only going to be engaged in instruction online, they will not have to provide verification because they're only going to be online. So they don't have to provide vaccination verification. So are we communicating with them that they can't participate in courses online? What about services? Do they still have access to counseling, financial aid advising, all that type of stuff online? Paul, I saw you shake your head. Yes. Did you want to answer that?
Sure. Yes, we have communicated to them. They do. We have our Academic Technology Center has put together a student support hub. Within that hub, there's all kinds of resources, both for academic use, but they've also partnered with Student Affairs and provide all the Student Affairs contacts and connections via that portal as well. So we do have students do have access both online and with some limited in-person capabilities in Student Affairs, and that will continue through the term. And we have communicated that to students. We've also communicated to students that even though they might be fully online or remote this term, therefore the requirement doesn't apply to them. If there is an intention for next term that they are going to come on campus, they will need to submit those documents before they can register for anything that has an in-person component.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Marge?
I do want to mention that this has to be repeated and repeated and repeated. We've got to continue, Mike, just like the public, we can't tell students enough of an update. So I'm sure Mindy would agree that we have a lot more communicating to do. We're trying to work with them a lot more frequently. So, students, they try to keep up, but they don't necessarily read the emails and the texts. So we're going to continue with this. We're never done with that part.
Mike?
So I'm aware that there is a baseball game scheduled at LCC this Saturday, and I'm wondering about outdoor athletic events. And I can tell you that I've been going to baseball games all summer long where most people were not wearing masks. So I'm kind of wondering if what our position is on outdoor athletic events at the college.
Paul?
Thank you. We do have capacity limits on events. We do have social distancing and mask wearing requirements in place where social distancing can't be maintained for spectators.
Good question. Anyone else? I'm put that hand down for you, Mike. So I would like to share with other board members that both Marge, myself, and Michael Blade attended an OSBA webinar on vaccination law and requirements. And it was specific to K-12 because it is a law that K-12 educators need to not only be vaccinated, but to also provide verification of their vaccination by October 18th. And I would like to say that the work that is being done at this college, even though there is not currently an executive order or a law, because OARs are laws that is guiding the work done here, that we were very much in alignment with the requirements that are being required by the state. And so I just want to commend the work that has been done, and that I know it's a lot, and there's a lot of other lots and big things on the plate right now. And so thank you for all the hard work to make sure that our student community and our employees are safe. So thank you. Let's move on to our ethics training and affirmation. Michael Blade?
Thank you, Chair Fragala. I suppose we want to do the training first and then talk the affirmation, or?
That sounds great. Let's do
Okay.
that.
So first of all, I realize that probably all of you are, old hats at board work, and therefore some of this ethics stuff. So I'm going to hit the high points. If you have questions, you want to stop me, that's fine. Or if you want to wait till the end, that's fine as well. I'm going to sort of break it down into the big chunks. And the first big chunk is financial gain. And that can be not only financial gain to you or your family or relatives, but it can also be the avoidance of a financial detriment. So if you're doing something that whether it makes money for you or your family, or whether it keeps your family from having to pay money, it doesn't matter. And so that's the first thing that you need to be thinking about when you're thinking about ethics and participating on a board. Gifts, I think probably all of you know, I think this is a fairly common thing to know as a board member, $50 single source limit. That's something you need to keep in mind if anybody's out there, especially if they've got something in front of the board or that some business with Lane, if they're trying to take you out to $100 dinners or give you take you to sporting events or something like that are over $50, that's something to keep in mind. Some of the questions around this financial gain is, who's a relative? Who do we have to protect, or who do we have to protect against, maybe is a better way of putting it. The statute cites your spouse, parent, step-parent, child, stepchild if they're living in your home, sibling, step-sibling, son or daughter-in-law, anybody for whom you have a legal support obligation. And also, and this one may not apply for you all, I can probably imagine a scenario where it might, but anyone the public official provides benefits arising from the public official's public employment. I don't think that one is going to be a very popular one. So who doesn't that include? Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that grandparents are not in there, grandchildren are not in there, aunts, uncles, cousins, etc. I would caution you to be really careful about parsing who it doesn't include. You might be able to get away with it, but the optics are not going to be on your side. So be careful if there's something that provides you a financial gain or keeps you from a financial detriment when you're dealing with whether it's you or a family member. The second big chunk item would be conflicts of interest. And there's two types of conflicts of interest. We're dealing with potential conflicts of interest and actual conflicts of interest. So a potential conflict of interest would be, your brother owns a construction, we'll use the track resurfacing that we did last year. Your brother owns a company that does track resurfacing, and it comes to the board that you're voting on whether we should approve a track resurfacing RFP, right? So that's a potential conflict of interest, right? It doesn't mean your brother is going to get the contract, but he might be throwing his hat into the ring. And so what you'd want to do in a case of a potential conflict of interest is announce it prior to any discussion or voting. So you want to be out in front of it, right? So announce, hey, I've got this issue. My brother has a company that may be doing this. I just want everybody to know. I may or may not talk to him about it, but just want everybody to know. In that case, you're still able to discuss, deliberate, and vote, but you need to announce it prior. Now, if you have an actual conflict of interest, and that's where you're voting on whether or not your brother's company is actually going to get the contract, right? That's an actual conflict of interest. Again, you should have already declared it, but if it's a situation where it's an actual conflict of interest and it hasn't come up previously, again, you're going to want to announce it at the outset. You don't want to take no action. You're not going to want to deliberate about it. You're going to basically abstain from talking about it. Now, there's one exception to that, and that's if your vote's needed to take official action. So in that case, you can vote, but you don't want to take part in the discussion or deliberation. So that's your actual conflict of interest. as a sort of a subset of conflict of interest. And again, I don't know that this one's really applicable to you all, but nepotism is an issue with board members. You want to be real careful about, employing relatives or using relatives to do things. Again, you're the only employee that the board has is the president. And so unless you're doing it, unless one of your relatives is applying to be Marge's replacement, you're probably okay in this instance. This is probably for different boards, but I did want to bring it up in case that ever does come up in some way. And then finally, and this one's the one that I think trips up most people. I think most people understand, financial interests and conflicts of interest, but the meetings law and the handout that was added to your packet has some interesting information on there, and I think it's good to know. But some of the extra things that you might want to know, social gatherings. Social gatherings are okay. We've done this in the past. We had the barbecue this summer. Social gatherings are fine if all of you are going to be there, or an OCCA gathering or something like that, where you're going for work and you're going to be at a gathering where there's a quorum. So in this instance, again, I think all of you know, 4 of you together is a quorum. So if there's going to be 4 or more of you there, social gatherings are fine, but don't deliberate about. You're not allowed to deliberate, discuss, obviously decide anything that's college business. Notice. So this is an interesting one, because I think notice for these meetings, a lot of people have it in their mind that you have to give a certain amount of notice, and really the statute's not very clear on notice. What it says is you have to give actual notice to interested persons, including media, sufficient time. Sorry, you have to give sufficient time to give actual notice to interested persons, including media, members of the media. So what is sufficient time? Well, that's not defined. And so I would say it's at least 24 hours. And the reason I would say it's at least 24 hours is because there's an exception section that talks about emergency meetings can be held with less than 24 hours notice. And because they specifically say less than 24 hours notice, I would say you have to give at least 24 hours if it's not an emergency meeting. So I don't think that's an issue for us. Most boards, I think this board included, give well in advance of 24 hours. But I just want to point out that there isn't a week notice, 7 days, 10 days. Those lengths of time are not in the statute. You must have minutes. They can be recorded minutes or they can be written minutes. It doesn't matter, but you must take minutes of the meetings. You must provide notice of executive sessions. Again, you guys are old pros at executive sessions. Lisa does a great job of saying the magic words at the beginning of each executive session. You have to identify what subsection of the law or subsections that you are entering into executive session for. There's no decision making in executive sessions. You're purely deliberating. Media can attend but can't report, and you're able to exclude everybody else. Some other things that you might want to, and we talked about this before, what I call string meetings, where you don't have a quorum, but Lisa calls Rosie and talks about an issue, and they're deliberating towards a decision, and that's they're talking about the factors of the issue and where they might be leaning. And then maybe Lisa calls Mike and has the same conversation, and then Lisa calls Angela. Well, none of those are a quorum, but if you're going, this can be done telephonically, via Zoom, via email. I would imagine it can be done via the US mail if you wanted to. Any type of situation where any amount of board members are meeting with and holding deliberations or leaning towards a decision whereby they're trying to get around the sunshine law or the public meeting law requirement is frowned upon. Is you're likely not to get away with that. And Oregon's had some issues with this in the past. I think we talked about that at one of our recent meetings. And so they're very sensitive about this type of issue. So be real careful about that. Finally, decisions that are made in violation of these meeting laws are avoidable. So it doesn't do you a whole lot of good to try to do those types of things and come to a decision, because those decisions are going to be voided anyway. The board can be sued by an affected person to force compliance, and it may require a payment of attorney's fees to the person who is suing. So I think it just, again, it doesn't make a lot of sense to try to get around the public meeting laws. Willful actors actually can be held jointly and severally liable for intentional violations. So if you are intentionally doing things, you can be, and just, I assume everybody knows what jointly and severally liable means, but that means you individually can be held liable for the whole amount, even though your fellow board member who did the same thing may not be held liable for any of it. So just and insurance is not going to cover you if you're doing intentional acts. So just want to point that out again. It just isn't worth the headaches of it all. Retreats and informational gathering meetings are subject to the public meetings law. So we have to have all of the things in place for a regular board meeting have to be in place for board retreats and informational gathering meetings. And then, yeah, we talked about imposing civil penalties oh, I'm sorry. One caveat to the civil penalty issue is if you're following legal counsel's advice, you cannot have a civil penalty enforced or imposed upon you. So that's my plug for Ask Me if you're unsure. We can also go and if I don't know and I can't figure it out, I can go talk to PACE as well. So PACE, our insurance carrier, has a loss prevention phone line that I can call and talk to them about an issue, and they can tell me, yeah, here's what you should do, here's what you shouldn't do, and this is what you should advise your board member or board as a whole. And that will also cover us for not having to pay that $25,000 up front. So we always want to talk to PACE prior if we can. So that is a very, very quick ethics rundown. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for the sunshine law? Such a nice name for a law, but was kind of a gloomy, cloudy description there at the end. Austin.
Absolutely. And I know I've asked specific questions in regards to elected officials that are also public employees, but could you just kind of just give a general aspect of with public employees, like what is like, because it's kind of like it's not necessarily a separate list of rules, but it's like, but it's essentially there's broader exemptions, I believe is how it's defined. Would you just kind of elaborate on that?
Right. So I think the biggest key with public employees or employees of public institutions, whether it's the U of O or eWeb, the City of Eugene, City of Florence, whatever, you aren't in control of those entities. And I'll pick on, I think we had this question before, and I'll pick on Steve because I know he works at the U of O. So if you're working at the U of O and the U of O, there's something's coming up where you're voting for against something that the U of O is involved in, Steve would not have to declare it. That would not be a conflict of interest, right? He doesn't have control over the University of Oregon, even if it's in his sphere of influence over there. So you're just because you're part of a public entity that is doing something with Lane and you're on the Lane board, it's not a situation where you're specifically in a conflict of interest or in a financial gain situation, unless somehow you personally are going to be getting the money, which it wouldn't make any sense in that instance, right? If U of O is getting the money, they're paying Steve's salary, but he's not getting, if he was getting a bonus for bringing in the business or something like that, which I don't think the U of O does, but I could imagine a scenario where somebody might be getting a bonus. That would be a problem. So it's only if you personally are receiving or a relative are receiving that financial benefit.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just so that we're not picking on Steve, I work for the Oregon Employment Department.
Right.
And yeah, exactly. Same exact thing. And because even though we're a part of a lot of different workforce initiatives, it doesn't necessarily mean that I have a conflict of interest because I also work with those same workforce development.
Yeah. And we do a lot of work with them. So yeah, that would not be a conflict for you.
Okay. So any other questions? Okay. How about a little kind of interactive scenario? So I decide to have a holiday party at my house and invite all the board members, employees, and union leadership. A board member doesn't want to come because of a quorum issue. What do you think? Are they right or are they wrong?
Are you asking me or are you?
No, I'm asking the board.
Okay, okay.
Like, think of it as like a game show, and the first person to get their hand up gets extra points or something. Angela, you beat Austin. Go ahead, Angela.
You're bringing up my competitive side, Lisa. It's gonna be there's no problem with quorum for social events. We just have to not discuss board business and deliberate toward a decision at your holiday party.
How'd she do, Mike?
You're great. Yep, that's right.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to put those hands down and give you one more first hand up bonus points. And you probably wouldn't have guessed that Angela is highly competitive, but I knew that. My husband is offered an opportunity to go on an expensive cruise to Alaska, all expenses paid, from a local IT company that has a contract at the college, which, by the way, we will be deciding on in the next year. What do you think? Should he go? Should we go? Austin?
The optics are not good. And there's a, you might have to report a potential conflict of interest if you did.
Mike?
Yeah, and I think there's a potential gift issue there too of over $50.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so I would say you should turn that down unless you can pay yourself. You could go, I think, as long as you're paying your own way. Although I do think Austin's right, you would have a potential conflict of interest to discuss at the board meeting prior to talking about that particular contract.
Great. Over $50. It's a no-no. All right, so let's move on to the annual affirmation statement. So if I remember correctly, we had something in a policy that said that we would be doing this. And so we are now starting to do this on an annual basis. We will try to add it into, potentially add it into a retreat, though we could continue to schedule it at a fall work session. Either one is probably fine. You have a copy of the annual affirmation statement. Mike, did you want to say anything about it?
Just really quickly, for those of you who may have sat on corporate boards in the past, you're probably looking at this and wondering where the rest of the meat is. When you have a corporate board, a lot of times you'll have a 10, 12, 15 page annual affirmation statement that goes through the code of ethics line by line and talks a lot about it. And I thought about doing one of those, and then I thought, no, I'm going to give you all the quick and dirty one. And if you want the other one, I could do that, but I'm hoping that this probably suffices. So this is just sort of a, yes, we agree with it and we agree to follow it type of thing, rather than going through it in detail.
Any feedback on this affirmation statement? I'm assuming that after this meeting, if we're good with it, having had the training, Michael Blade will send it to us along with a copy of the Code of Ethics Policy 2715, and we will need to sign it and return it. Mike?
Yeah, it occurs to me that we may want to include in the affirmation statement that the board annually goes through a training with our general counsel.
Can we add that, Michael Blade?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can add whatever you want. I'll take the notes.
Okay, great. So we'll add that to the affirmation. Angela?
Thank you. I'm happy with this affirmation statement. My comment is about the timing. I think our policy says that we'll do this at the annual organizational meeting. And I think we kept that language. but I think we're all a little bit unclear what that is, and sort of concluded that that's our summer retreat. And I think because of the cycle of elections and when people come on and off, I think it's important that it occurs in the second half of the year so that we catch new board members coming on, so they don't have a whole year before they sign or have the sort of training and overview. I don't know if that makes
So when you
sense, I
say
guess.
second half, you mean the summer?
Yeah, I'm talking
Okay.
about calendar year, not.
Yep. Okay. Yep.
So I guess what I was at length trying to say is I like the fall timeline. That makes sense to me, but I don't know if it aligns with our policy statement.
Okay. So I do believe you're correct in that language of our organizational meeting is referring to the summer retreat. And no, Rosie, can you clarify that? I thought it was the summer retreat.
No, it's the meeting in July. July
It's-
is when the board elects officers and so forth.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the meeting before the retreat? I can clarify that later. Go ahead, Angela.
I think all I was saying is that I wanted it to catch new board members coming on in a new cycle. And since the meeting is in July, it would. So everything I said is unnecessary. I apologize.
Great. I think that is a really important detail that you're highlighting. And since Rosie has clarified that it is the July meeting, I think we're in good shape. So we will, I guess, do it again in July, and then we'll start an annual cycle. Okay. Any other feedback on the annual affirmation statement?
Thank you
All
again.
right.
Thank you again.
Yep. And I'll include Mike's sentence.
Great. Okay. And so my understanding, so you're going to send this to us, Mike, along with a copy of board policy 2715, like in the next week or so?
Yes, it'll be before the end of the week, probably tomorrow.
Okay. And then you need it returned signed. Is there any possibility that, do we use DocuSign at the college?
Not sure.
Yes,
Yes.
but I'm not sure if the board members have it set up. We'll have to check on that, Lisa.
Okay, because all you have to do is send us a link that'll send us to a power form. It's super easy. Then we don't have to print it, fill it out, scan it, but it's also fine. It's not hard to do that. So just was curious. All
I'll get
right.
with Richard and see if we can't do that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. So that brings us to our last item, which is a report. And it is the Community College Rules of Procurement. And so in an effort to try and listen to some of the feedback that we've been getting from board members about, providing the information and just letting us, and then just letting board members ask questions and have a discussion. We put it in as a report. This is something that we do have to approve. And so we're assuming that everybody has read it. And now is the time for questions and comments. And I believe we have Greg Holmes here to discuss this with us. Rosie.
I'm assuming we won't take action in a work session.
We will not. It'll go to the consent agenda at the board meeting. And if anybody wants to pull it, then they can. Any comments or questions on this document? Okay, it will move to the it'll move to the consent agenda of the board meeting, and I think we are done with that item. So I'm going to take us to future meeting dates and agenda items. I did want to mention with future meeting dates, as a reminder, the forums for the president's search are happening. The public forums are Thursday, October 7th and Monday, October 11th. All community members are invited to those, so everyone is welcome to attend. The first employee forum was today, Wednesday, October 6th, and there'll be another one on Monday, October 11th. And there is a student forum, though students may attend the community forums, as may employees. There is a student forum on Tuesday, October 12th. That one is last because of the students are just returning. And I do hope all board members will fill out the online survey. And if you're interested in participating in a forum, that's great. Additionally, there are going to be opportunities for Black, Indigenous, and people of color who are employed at the college or are a student at the college to have focus groups where they can meet in that space. So that's just kind of a reminder for everyone. And then one more future meeting date that I wanted to bring up as a reminder that we have the accreditation visit the week of October 25th. And the accreditors have asked to meet with 3 board members, chair, vice chair, and they have asked actually for a new board member, a newer board member to also join that meeting. The meeting is scheduled from 9 to 11 a.m. So it would need to be someone who is able to make that meeting on October 25th from 9 to 11 a.m. Is there anyone here who might be interested in doing that? Austin?
Yeah, I'm willing. And also, just to clarify, it's a virtual site visit, right?
Correct. We will be meeting in Zoom with them. So, so let me see. Is there anyone else? If Austin is available and willing, I think he'd make a great addition to the team. Does that seem like a good move forward? Okay, great. So Marge and Donna, if you can make sure to get that information once we have everything confirmed. Our next board meeting is, I'm just going to look at my calendar to make sure I get it right, October 20th, 3rd week of October. And just so everyone also knows, the advisory committee for the presidential search will be meeting on October 13th to do some work on the profile. Is there anything else in future meeting dates? Mike?
This isn't exactly future meeting, but I did want to commend the ad hoc committee. I know that there's a lot of behind the scenes work that has to go on, and I really appreciate all the work that the 3 of you have done.
Thanks, Mike. Anything else? Future meeting dates, agenda items. Okay, I think we are finished for October 6th work session. So I'm going to officially convene the October work session of the LCC Board of Education. And I will see board members in an executive session, which is a separate Zoom link that you should be able to find in your LCC email. Thank you and good night.